Well, Australia's attitude to sexuality and marriage aren't the only fundamentals to have changed dramatically in our lifetime. So too has our attitude to the one thing that for centuries has underpinned prosperity and happiness: our freedom. Freedom of speech, for example, started to diminish in 1995 when Section 18C of the Federal Racial Discrimination Act made it illegal to offend, insult, humiliate or intimidate people for their race or colour. Opposing this legislation, as I do, doesn't mean you want to spout racist comments. It just means you think the decision to say such things and how you respond should someone utter them to you are both personal. Saying racist things makes you a douchebag, and choosing to be offended by a douchebag is, if you ask me, almost as lame. But we're not smart enough to realise that, according to most politicians and indeed the zeitgeist. Section 18C of the Racial Discrimination Act began the long, slow process of us outsourcing moral decisions to the government. That's not me saying that. That's Michael Lavarch, the Labor Attorney General, who said at the time that 18C was introduced, quote, "Legislation can have a powerful educative role," unquote. It sure can. Just ask young Ballarat mother Zoe Bueller, to who the powerful educative role of Victorian Premier Dan Andrews' emergency legislation preventing free speech about COVID lockdowns came in the form of handcuffs being locked onto her wrists while she was at home with her kids one morning in December 2020. The government has since changed its mind about the offence that led to this dramatic and draconian arrest and dropped all the charges without explanation. But there has been no admission of error from the police or the government. The best example of that is Matt Hancock, the former British Health Secretary who oversaw the COVID lockdowns and was busted breaking his own regulations by snogging his mistress at work in June 2021. Hancock has been to Murwillumbah in northern New South Wales, shooting the British reality TV show I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. Here's a clip.
On a lot of people's lives.
You got a lockdown fine, didn't you?
No, of course I didn't.
I thought you broke lockdown rules.
No, I did not.
All right,
I didn't
sorry,
break
go on.
any.
You were socialising someone outside of your household.
Yeah, I didn't break any laws. Guidance is different, but anyway, I don't want to go.
Oh, so there's a rule and there's a law.
Guidance.
The guidance is guidance.
Right.
But the problem was it was my guidance.
Exactly.
This is one of the few places where a politician anywhere in the world has openly discussed how the pandemic and lockdowns were mismanaged. Still, English YouTube star and comedian Russell Brand says Matt Hancock didn't go far enough.
Matt Hancock gave PPE contracts to his friends. That means that some of the equipment that's used in hospitals was manufactured by companies that Matt Hancock personally awarded contracts to. In many cases, companies that had no experience in the manufacture. So it's an explicit example of what would seem to be corruption. He discharged untested residents from hospitals back into care homes, resulting in a vast death toll. The government that he was part of used legal coercion to restrict basic human freedoms of the entire population for the best part of 2 years while disobeying them themselves. Now, I suppose it's ordinary and natural that times move on, that there is progress. But has there been a real reckoning? Have we really addressed what went on in those 2 years?
Everything that Brand listed there applies in Australia too. Trying to just move on without, as Brand calls it, a reckoning would be like, global warming catastrophist Tim Flannery turning up at the floods in Western New South Wales today and saying they should probably start bottling some of the water for the drought that's surely going to start next week. We do need a reckoning, and it can start on November 26, when Victorian voters get the chance to kick out the utterly rotten, corrupt and oppressive government of Premier Dan Andrews. The man who imposed the longest lockdowns in the world and has never shown a skerrick of remorse for it. If he remains in power, then it's just an invitation for him to do it again. Our freedoms have never been more fragile, and it's time to fight to get them back.